This might be one of the most impressive displays of defensive wrestling in modern MMA history, not just because of the technique and the skill used, but because of who it was against. Yaroslav Amosov was 27-0, and he was tearing through Bellator's welterweight division. An exceptional wrestler with pretty decent hands too. And Jason Jackson failed on the Ultimate Fighter, so a lot of people were thinking that Amosov was going to out-wrestle Jackson, but Jackson put on an absolute masterclass, knocking out Amosov in the third round, and here's how he does it. Jackson put an insane amount of pressure on Amosov in this fight, using a very active stance, a good mix between a Muay Thai stance and a traditional wrestling stance, allowing for quite a lot of footwork. He moved forward a lot in this fight, getting Amosov on the back foot and just making him really uncomfortable, because it's really difficult to shoot takedowns on the back foot, especially if you're parallel and your feet are on the same line, which in Amosov's case happened quite a lot. So just making sure it's difficult for him to shoot in the first place. And when Amosov goes for a level change and he just dips his level, Jackson scoots his hips away, which is perfect to get your hips out of range, and he lowers his left hand to use as a potential frame. Jackson overcommits on a jab. Amosov ducks down, gets both hands on the single leg, which perfect, right? He's right there, perfect shot. But Jackson lowers his jab, turns it into a frame, and gets a right overhook. Gets a grip on the head and starts ripping Amosov's head up, which is perfect. If you can't get the crossface, control the head and bring it up. You control the head, you control the body. You can't take someone down if they're, pulling your head up. And then Jackson just slips out of the way of the counter hook. Just perfect stuff. Amosov, wanting to relieve some of the pressure, starts pumping out jabs and almost running forward. Jackson plants his feet, often slips on the outside of the jab, and uncorks a right uppercut that, even if it misses, it can act as a frame or an underhook. I say this quite a lot to myself. Uppercuts are way better at defending takedowns than knees because they give you an underhook. Jackson does this a lot throughout the fight, and he builds off of it as the fight goes, and he ends up getting more accurate with it. Again, we see Amosov moving along the fence. Jackson throws out a jab. Amosov slips on it, tries to go for the takedown, but again, Jackson gets double underhooks this time and rips Amosov up and disengages. Amosov is able to land a nice left hook though. Amosov, trying to get his striking going, throws a leg kick, and timing-wise, because you can't really shoot a takedown while you're throwing a kick, this is perfect time for Jackson to just land a nice stiff jab down the middle. Amosov throws a jab to set up his takedown, and it actually works pretty well because Jackson slips on the outside of the jab and massively overextends on a right hand, and Amosov changes levels. Perfect shot for Amosov, perfect setup, perfect timing, everything. But Jackson is still able to get a right underhook. Very, very deep underhook, by the way. If you look in all of these situations, the underhooks and the overhooks he's getting, they're good. Like, he's committing fully to them, and he's able to frame on Amosov's bicep and rip him up and disengage. He's doing the right thing, and he's doing the right thing well and quick. Amosov's against the fence, and again he goes for a jab and tries to change levels. Jackson throws a massive uppercut, which misses, but it gets Amosov to not shoot. It completely stops him in his tracks. Jackson then lands a nice jab down the middle, and he lands a cross. With the cross, he's following Amosov's head. He's not trying to just go straight down the middle. He's tracking him because he knows that Amosov's trying to get his head off center line, so he's following him, and he ends up landing and then getting out of the way of the counter punch, slipping out of the way, which is really impressive because you see in a lot of fights when people fight really good wrestlers, especially against people with, OV in the last name, their grappling they'll show up with good grappling, but you see holes in their striking, and Jackson's striking was on point in this fight still, and I can imagine that he worked a lot of defensive wrestling in this fight, so it's very impressive. Jackson tries to blitz into range with a jab, but before his jab's all the way out, Amosov changes his level, and keep in mind, Jackson is halfway through a jab, and a pretty hard one at that. But within just about a frame, he drops his left hand all the way down to his waist, ready to get an underhook and an overhook, and he perfectly just frames up, rips Amosov up, disengages. He takes back the space. Amosov tries to go in for a jab. Jackson lands a nice right uppercut, whiffs on the left hook, but is now timing that uppercut a lot better and just getting down the timing on the takedowns from the first round. Jackson also mixes in a few jabs to the body. A jab to the body is perfect against someone trying to take you down, as it kind of helps you match their level in case they do level change, and if they do, that jab to the body becomes a jab to the face, right? You see Alex Pereira, he used this quite a lot against Yuri Prohashka. So Jackson jabs to body, gets out of the way. Amosov starts pressuring forward with more jabs. Jackson lands a right uppercut to the body. As they come in, he's able to use an underhook and pass over and get Amosov's back, and he's locked the hands around the back. That's a very, very tough position to be in from anyone on the receiving end. As he presses his weight down, Jackson is using his right knee on Amosov's right foot just to make sure he can't go anywhere, just putting his weight in the right places. Just excellent stuff. And as Amosov tries to reach for something and either like sit through or just get his arm active, because he's not posting on the ground, Jackson just pushes his way forward and, smacks Amosov right on his head. This is all within the first round. Keep in mind, Amosov is 27-0 and has looked exceptionally dominant in most of his fights. So for Jackson to not only defend all the takedowns flawlessly, but to also get his own is insanely impressive and also incredibly demoralizing for Amosov. As Amosov is moving side to side along the fence, your feet are typically parallel, it makes you easier to hit. Jackson lands a nice jab down the middle, and as Amosov tries to move his head off the center line or level change, Jackson lands a nice right hand. Now, Amosov again starts trying to press forward with jabs. He's made the read that Jackson is throwing an uppercut, so he tries and throws a left head kick. However, this kind of just gets smothered, and Jackson ends up literally just punching him in the ass. Amosov loses his footing, he gets really low, but he goes for a takedown anyway. Jackson starts moving in, gets an underhook, gets an overhook, and just starts pressing forward to make sure that Amosov, doesn't get to his legs and that he can keep controlling space. Amosov now begins to get pretty sloppy in the striking because he's been hit with some good shots and he is pretty much having no success with any of the takedowns. You see here, he throws a big winging left hook and he misses pretty bad. Jackson's able to move out of the way though. Then he throws a lead uppercut, which is probably one of the worst punches to throw, especially against a good striker, as with no setup behind it, it can be countered real easily. So Amosov throws the lead uppercut, Jackson steps back, lands a right hand, then pummels in an underhook and an overhook as Amosov is going to try and change levels, and just pushes Amosov against the fence. When they break from that clinch, Jackson is not in a very good position. He's almost like in southpaw, and he's almost turning his back away, so Amosov throws the right hand. Jackson blocks it. Now this is a horrible position for Jax to be in. He's up against the fence, he can't sprawl, he's not even in his stance properly, right? He blocks the punch, Amosov tries to get in on the legs. Jackson drops his hands, gets an overhook, gets an underhook, and completely sprawls while taking the angle perfectly. He's on his toes, he's putting his weight on Amosov. Picture perfect sprawl, and Amazon is quite literally on his knees attempting a shot. I cannot stress enough how difficult this would be to do against Amosov normally, let alone against the fence in an exchange like this. This is insanely impressive. Amosov throws a leg kick, so Jackson commits with a good left hook. However, Amosov is able to duck under and try and get in on the legs. Jackson again drops his hand, right overhook, uses the left hand to frame, and instead of ripping the head up, he just controls the head and just completely sprawls out, which, Amosov tried to commit on the shot a bit more, but Jackson's still doing the correct things. So here we see Jackson just changing levels as a fake, just trying to match Amosov's level. Jackson's fakes in this fight, while subtle, were extremely effective because faking the level change, it essentially resets Amosov's thought process. He's thinking, okay, when can I shoot? When can I shoot? You know, when he's skirting against the fence, he can't shoot. So he's like, I can't shoot yet, I can't shoot yet. And when he plants his feet, he's like, okay, I can shoot. But if Jackson changes his level, that kind of resets his thought process. He's like, okay, I've got to find another moment to shoot. Insanely effective. And when he does start to level change, Jackson just faking the uppercut completely gets him to just spring back up and resets that sort of timer, giving Jackson more time to work on the feet. Very subtle, very effective. Now, Amosov again goes in with the lead uppercut. Jackson steps back, counters with the right hand, goes for almost like a left straight. Amosov ducks under, tries to go for the legs. Jackson is so quick to go for the underhook and tries to pummel for double underhooks. Amosov just doesn't really even try too hard with the takedown. They just immediately end up back in the clinch. Jackson again lands a nice long right straight against the fence and frames away from the counter just using a long guard. Amosov again starts pumping out the jabs and tries to throw a left hook. Jackson, instead of trying to uppercut, just blocks the head kick perfectly using both hands. Picture perfect way to block a head kick, that's how it's done. Right? He then tries to take back the space. Amosov shoots. Again, Jackson just underhook and overhook really quick with it. Amosov is now trying to work in the clinch. He's like, okay, let me just try and pummel through punches in the clinch. Let me just try and get active, just get some volume going. Jackson notices this, uses double collar tie and lands a massive knee to the face. Amosov again throws the lead uppercut as Jackson is circling out. Jackson immediately goes for the underhook and the overhook. Amosov can barely even, lower his level by that point, and he circles it around and disengages. Jackson then throws a right hand. It doesn't land, but it gets Amosov way closer to the fence. Amosov wants to try something different, so he switches to southpaw, throws the left hand sort of on the angle change. Jackson throws a big left hook and whiffs on the right hand. Amosov gets under, but again, underhook, overhook, just rinse and repeat, just the same picture perfect takedown defense, and they go back into the clinch and Jackson's able to disengage. Jackson again lands a good 1-2, just following Amosov as he moves his head. Amosov just tries to grit down on his mouthpiece and throw punches, so Jackson obliges and starts throwing a lot of punches in close. Not effective right away, but you can see the inspiration from the finishing sequence. Jackson, realizing he's not landing too many shots and that he's way too close to Amosov, just pulls out of the exchange. Amosov realizes that they're no longer striking. He tries to shoot in on a takedown. Jackson just rinse and repeat the same sprawl technique, but this time he controls the head as Amosov's coming up and lands another massive knee. Amosov pressures forward with the jab. Jackson plants his feet, just grazes with the uppercut. Amosov again tries to level change in. They clinch. Jackson must be incredibly strong because as they're disengaging from the clinch, he starts using collar ties, and Amosov is essentially just looking at the floor. So Jackson lands a short uppercut, just a little one, you can barely even notice it, and then another knee right to the face. Very nice stuff. Amosov goes for the jab again. Jackson slips out of the way, as he's been doing the whole fight. Very impressively, he keeps moving his head, even while the threat of the takedown is still there, so he slips out of the way of the jab, goes for the uppercut again. Amosov tries to change levels, doesn't even commit to this takedown. He realizes that he's not getting anywhere, throws a left hook. Jackson just ever so slightly slips his head out of the way, just very smooth head movement. Now Amosov changes his levels, he tries to shoot in. Jackson doesn't actually react that quickly, like he doesn't get his arms down in time. But look at where his eyes are. Always on Amosov. He knows the takedown's coming. He just hasn't, reacted how he usually does. He's still able to sprawl this takedown perfectly, just with double overhooks, this time going into more of a traditional wrestling sprawl. Amosov again tries to get him with the jab. Jackson slipping on the outside, rolling under the jab, keeping a strong, low stance. He goes for the uppercut and he lands it pretty good. Amosov backs up as it hurts. Then Amosov comes back into range. Alright. Jackson overcommits massively with a right hook. Amosov gets under. Now this time he takes the angle on the shot and he's able to circle around to Jackson's back and get the hands locked. Now, Jackson does the correct things. He frames against the leg so he can't get tripped out. He immediately goes to the fence so he can't, get his back fully taken, and he starts attacking the hands constantly. And this is really important, as whenever you see anyone have their back taken in MMA, at least while standing, the commentators will always say they need to attack the hands, and this is what Jackson does. And he's also constantly turning and shifting his weight, so Amosov, has to constantly reset with the takedown. Amosov eventually does get the takedown, but with 10 seconds left in the round, he doesn't do much with it, and Jackson is able to get up pretty quickly. Just, again, doing the right things at the right time, the right way. Jackson, realizing the mistake he made at the end of the second round, he comes out, jabs, starts changing angles. He's gliding and changing directions as he throws the left hand, and it opens up a nice angle for the right hand. It just prevents Amosov from getting a good shot underneath his punches. Right? Then Amosov goes for the left kick. Jackson catches it, scoops through, pushes Amosov against the fence, and is able to get his back. He does the right things. He has, the grip locked down. He's putting his weight in the right places. But Amosov is a good wrestler, and he's able to circle around. Jackson, again, gets the collar tie and lands a great knee to the face. He got really good at timing when you're meant to knee. A lot of people will try to do the knee to stuff takedowns, and that actually can get smothered really easy. But if you time it right after they've shot and as they're coming back up, that's the perfect time to land it, as they can't necessarily reshoot as quickly. Now this is where the uppercut really lands perfectly. Amosov goes for the jab and reaches down for the takedown, except he doesn't bring his body with him. He only goes for the takedown with his arms. He is essentially sticking his body straight up and then reaching. He essentially just leaves his hands down by his kneecaps. Right? But Jackson slips on the outside of the jab, lands a nice uppercut, really springs Amosov's head back. This really does hurt Amosov. Jackson's able to land a knee, and then they clinch. Jackson realizes that, Amosov's not really all there. Lands a left hook as Amosov's still trying to grab onto things. He then tries to go for a really half-assed Sotogari trip. Jackson just nails him with a right hand, and again, just nailing him with a right hand pivot counter, similar to what Dominic Reyes does with his left hand, but just obviously opposite sides. And now for the finishing sequence. Keep in mind, Amosov, rocked by that uppercut, doesn't really want to shoot takedowns at anymore, as they're getting stuffed, they're getting reversed, he's getting, uppercutted really bad. So, both men step in with the right hand and both of them miss. Right? Jackson then goes for a left hook, and then Amosov, after the second punch, leaves the exchange. He thinks the exchange is done, but it's not. Jackson goes, right hand, left hook, right hand again. It's that final punch, just extending out the combination that rocks Amosov bad and sends him to the mat. Jackson doesn't want to fully engage in ground and pound, so just, again, gets ready to defend the takedown and just shovel uppercuts Amosov right as he's trying to grab his legs. It lands really clean. And credit to Amosov, he does end up getting back up to his feet, which is really impressive because Jackson was landing some clubbing shots. He gets back up to his feet. Jackson starts to try and leap in with a big, right straight. So Amosov naturally goes to shoot, and keep in mind, Jackson is halfway through this right hand. He switches it to a massive uppercut right from the hip. It just glances by Amosov's head and knocks him completely out cold. Funny enough, Jackson still does sprawl what he thinks is a takedown. He completely gets his hips down, but Amosov is already out. This was an insanely impressive performance by Jason Jackson, who, again, like I said, failed on Tough, was essentially, and don't get me wrong, excellent fighter, this title doesn't do him justice, a UFC reject. And to knock out, not just knock out, but dominate, 99% of the fight against a 27-0 undefeated monster. And I know, against Bellator competition, but still, to go 27-0 against fairly decent fighters is insanely impressive. And to do that was just insane. The technique, the contact, just everything behind it was impressive. And it's a shame that he ended up losing to Ramazan, but still an excellent performance. And I really feel like people could learn a lot from watching this fight when it comes to defensive wrestling. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and I'll see you guys next time.